Hi, everyone. Welcome back to What's Up Wednesday. My name is Rachel, and I am on the client support team here at Early Learning Ventures. And today I am joined by Saba Ahmed, who is the founder of SKA Education, Training, and Consultant. Welcome, Saba. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Great, awesome. In this conversation, we unpack understanding the why behind children's actions can completely transform the way educators teach, respond, and build relationships in the classroom. I also want to thank everyone who is joining us today. If you have not heard of Early Learning Ventures before, we are a mission driven nonprofit based out of Colorado, focusing on providing business solutions to help childcare businesses across the nation succeed. We provide software solutions and hands-on support to help streamline daily operations, reduce costs, and improve care. These What's Up Wednesday episodes are just one of many free resources that we offer, and you can find links in the description of this video that'll take you to our website where you can learn more, watch past episodes, view our other resources, and hopefully connect with us further. All right, Saba, can you start us off by introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit about your role and your part at SKA Education, Training, and Consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Rachel said, I am actually the founder and principal trainer at SKA Education, Training, and Consulting. We are a firm that kind of does all things early childhood, but we really focus on kind of two tiers. One is professional development and coaching for educators, for teachers, for school systems in the early childhood world. So all things growth and development in the spirit of this kind of cycle of continuous improvement. And then the other arm is that we actually connect with families and help families understand and manage and kind of react to their own children's behaviors and situations that may be going on at home. And sometimes parents say, I don't know what to do. And that's when we sweep in and come in and just try to provide some support. So we do kind of all the things under the early childhood umbrella, but our main focus is behaviors with a lens of kind of neuroscience and trauma-informed care.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. And you said you like the full umbrella, but I love that it's supporting the educators and the families as well.
Yeah, it's always a partnership, and the more kind of common information and keeping everybody on the same page, it's just beneficial to everybody within the ecosystem of a child's world.
Yeah, and then if you're able to share, can you tell us what inspired the creation of the business?
Yeah, I've been in early childhood for about 24, 25 years now, in all different capacities, in the classroom, in leadership and advocacy, all these different things. And I kind of gained a really firm understanding of children and what they need and children's development. And a few years ago, I was working in professional development, and I really found that this was something that I love doing. I love connecting with other adults. I love connecting with teachers. My absolute biggest joy in my work is when we have those aha moments and people kind of are able to make those connections and understanding what's going on and to see how it benefits not just the teacher, but the classroom, the children, the overall environment. So I kind of took that love and thought, you know what, let me see what I can do with this and turn it into something much bigger so that I can really expand my impact.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. So, beyond traditional professional development that most in education are probably familiar with, what do you believe is the most effective long-term model when it comes to supporting educators?
So I think, we look at traditional professional development as kind of these training days or maybe a couple of days of training where and I do it all the time. I get up in front of a group of educators, a group of maybe a school system, and say, hey, here's some really great topics and here are the really important things that you need to know about this topic. And what I found is that people are really excited and they have those moments and you see the head nods and the wheels turning, and they're really excited when they leave, and then they get back into their classrooms and all of that excitement kind of starts to fade away because real life kicks in, and we can teach all the things, and it's kind of a theory versus practice approach. So I think of professional development and a really well-rounded system of professional development as training and coaching together. Because I think of training as, we're learning, it's a lecture, it's interactive, it's theory, it's explaining and, giving out information, right? But coaching is really where the transformation happens. And without the two working together, there's a really big missing piece. And so while I think professional development in terms of training is fantastic and it's a great place to start, I think a long-term model that would be amazing to see would be this kind of permanent shift to how do we follow up and make sure that educators, leadership, everybody's getting the coaching that they need in real time, in practical settings as it happens. Because it's easy to say, well, this happened to me, and I have a child who's really giving me a hard time. What do I do? And I can say, oh, here's some strategies. But until we implement them and kind of use some trial and error, we don't know what's going to work. And so, that's a really big part of it. And I think another thing is, just from the lens of neuroscience, that's how humans work, right? Like we learn something, but then until we put it into practice, we're not really getting the full effect of what we're learning. And practice is, the old saying, practice makes perfect. It's practice, repetition. That's what kind of gets us to these permanent long-term changes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what came to mind when you were speaking. I love that you said that, putting it into practice, because we all have the best intentions. And I think with learning anything new, yes, you come to it ready to learn and eager, but sometimes when you put yourself in the real situation, it's easy to forget those tools. And that coaching, that's really great. I think that's a huge important piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
So focusing on the behaviors, in your experience, why is challenging behavior the number one issue that educators struggle with?
It's funny, behaviors of all the topics of professional development, behaviors are the ones that come up the most. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, kids are changing, generations are changing, right? Like what children were and how they were 10 years ago is very different from the children that we get now. And their experiences are very different. And more than that, behaviors, we tend to, as adults, react to behaviors from emotion rather than kind of practical knowledge that we have, right? So we tend to be reactive instead of trying to understand them. We just respond to them really quickly. And a lot of that has to do with kind of understanding why it is that we're reacting. And this is something that we really work on quite a bit with educators and actually with parents and family members, and really understanding, what is it about this particular behavior that really triggers you? Why do you get so upset about this one particular behavior? And there's a number of reasons, right? There's no one size fits all approach, but a lot of times what we end up finding out is, we come from a time where a lot of the ages of educators and parents, we didn't get the support that we needed and that we know is best now as kids. So a lot of times it'll come out and say, well, I never got to, speak up to my teachers. How come, these kids shouldn't get to? Yeah. When in fact, we know allowing children the freedom to speak, allowing children to self-advocate, those are really fantastic skills. But because, maybe a teacher will come to me and say, well, I was never allowed to as a child. And, then we have to unpack that a little bit. So a lot of times challenging behaviors are not actually meant to be challenging from a child's perspective. We just perceive them as challenging because of our own lived experiences. And so we really have to work on kind of pausing, and instead of being reactive, we really need to try and understand what the causes of the behavior and why we're reacting to it and why the child is doing it.
Yeah, I think that is such a great perspective. And it's like their environment is changing. Everything is different. And yeah, so what would you say that educators are typically missing when trying to manage or respond to what we perceive as difficult behaviors.
Yeah, I think really what I've seen the most is they're missing the why. Um, we focus so much on kind of wanting to stop the behavior and what can we do, what strategies can we put in place. It's all well intentioned. How can we stop the behavior? Um, and what I like to tell people is actually let's take it a step back and kind of work backwards. Let's understand why we're getting this behavior and then try to be proactive to try to make sure that we're creating an environment where that behavior doesn't occur, right? So we tend to focus on wanting to fix it rather than, and we skip over understanding it. And so the behavior doesn't come out of nowhere. There's a saying, all behavior is communication. And so kind of stopping to say, okay, what is this child trying to communicate with me? And so when we don't really understand the why behind the behavior, we end up using strategies that might stop the behavior in the short term, but we're not actually seeing any long-term change or impact in a beneficial way to the child.
Yeah, and I think what you just shared there, it makes me think of, like us as adults, we're able to kind of unpack that with ourselves and get to the root cause and like, why am I feeling yucky today? Oh, I didn't get enough sleep. And children aren't necessarily able to do that or don't have the tools to do that themselves at a young age. And so what you just said there, I mean, that's our role as the caregiver to be able to get to the root cause and address how we can support from there.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is not only are we pausing to kind of understand the root cause so that we can say, okay, maybe it's that this child gets really hungry in the middle of the day and they just need a quick snack and that'll fix it. But it also starts to help to teach that child how to self-advocate, to be able to say, hey, I'm feeling hungry. Can I have a snack? We know, you get to know, I always say no matter how much experience you have in early childhood education, you can have the best classrooms, best materials, best lesson plans without strong relationships as the foundation of everything that you're doing. None of that is going to be nearly as meaningful. And so when we build relationships with kids and we give them the freedom and the tools and the voice to be able to say, hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I have, a need, I'm feeling upset, I'm frustrated, whatever it might be, we're teaching them self-advocacy. And then the cycle of, they're advocating for themselves before they respond with an unwanted or challenging behavior, they're able to say, hey, I have a need, can you help me?
Yeah.
Right. And so when we get to know these kids and when they say, oh, I'm feeling really hungry, I can say, ooh, you get upset when you're hungry, let me take care of that before you get upset, before the behavior starts to go south.
Absolutely. I love that, teaching them those skills.
Yeah.
Focusing on professional development, how would you say that meaningful professional development really can help reduce these challenging behaviors in the classroom overall?
I think it's about creating systems. So systems of, kind of like what we were saying earlier, theory put into practice, right? And so meaningful professional development is not just theory. It is, hey, let's look at what's happening in your classroom right now and figure out what's driving it, right? So when educators kind of have a holistic understanding of child development, neuroscience, the impact of lived experiences, they can start responding differently, right? Like it's the same thing. I always say one of the most amazing things about the neuroscience of child development and understanding that is when you can see it through that lens, it's no longer an emotional response that we're having. It's almost a clinical response where you can say, this child's brain is not developed enough to be able to remember the 3-step instructions that I gave them. How do I shift my behavior? Or, like, let's think of it this way. If somebody had a broken arm, you wouldn't expect them to be able to throw a baseball because you know that they can't throw a baseball with a broken arm.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? Like if we're expecting children to do something that they're unable to do developmentally, physically, cognitively, all of those ways, then we're kind of setting ourselves up to have a harder time. So really meaningful professional development means, getting that knowledge, that understanding of all of these things and how all of those systems work together and really seeing it as a science, and then being able to apply that in a way that creates a safe and nurturing and responsive environment for children.
So you talked about how to truly understand the behavior and therefore prevent it. But specifically for coaching, how does coaching play in on helping educators make that shift?
So a big chunk of that is that the coach, I think, kind of acts as a little bit of a buffer, right? It's if I learn something and I'm expected to apply it immediately, I'm going to feel really nervous. I might forget some steps. I might, you know, do something wrong and feel like I'm not getting it. I'm just going to give up. I'm not made for this. Or, this is not working for me. I'm going to try it once. When you have a coach and kind of watching, being a guide, modeling for you what to do, how to do it, even having like reflective conversations after the fact, it's something where you can kind of rely on somebody else to see things from a different point of view, like almost like this third person point of view, to say, hey, here's what was happening. Here's how you reacted. Tell me more about that. Here's what I saw from the child's perspective. Is that what you saw? Let's try to understand it. When you have a coach that's there to help kind of serve as a guide, it doesn't feel as intimidating to implement all of these wonderful things that you're learning, because there's somebody that you can bounce your questions off of. There's somebody that you can say, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I know I'm supposed to be doing this. Can you show me how? And that coach will happily, jump in and say, let me show you. I got it. Let's practice it next time together. Or maybe that coach will say, I've seen you do it 3 times. You got it. Right? But having that encouragement and that guide is a really important step, because otherwise it kind of like feels like, okay, I'm giving you all this information and go and apply. And that's just not the reality, right? Not when it comes to managing, 15, 20 different personalities of all these little tiny people in your classrooms. It's a lot. So just having a little bit of a buffer and somebody to kind of be there to be your support system is I think it's a big difference.
Absolutely. I love that. For educators who are watching, do you have anything you can share on an immediate something like some sort of mindset shift? That's hard to say. Mindset shift that they can make that immediately impacts how they're handling challenging behavior?
Yeah, I think, one thing, if nothing else, a really great reframe of mind is to ask yourself, instead of asking yourself, how do I stop this? Or why, like, what's going on? How can I make this stop? Say, what is this behavior communicating? Why is this happening? Sometimes the answer is right in front of us. We just haven't paused long enough to see, because, like I said, sometimes we can be reactive, right? We want to stop the behavior. Sometimes we have to stop the behavior immediately. It can cause harm. There's always those situations. But if we have an opportunity to just reframe that question and say, instead of asking how, say why. Just understanding the why behind the behavior can be a really big and powerful mindset shift, because then you can start to notice what else is going on. What happened right before the behavior occurred? What happened after? Are we rewarding, kind of unconsciously rewarding the behavior without even realizing it? Is this child seeking attention? Are they hungry? Are they sleepy? What's going on? And so understanding that really gives us a different perspective. And in my opinion, and actually in my experience, applying this with teachers, applying this reframe with teachers, and even with parents, is they start to see that child as more than just the behavior. And when you can see that child is, beyond just the behavior, and say, oh, there's a need there, and it's my job to address that need, it just makes everything kind of roll so much smoother, because your motivation to respond to that need comes from a different place.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really great takeaway from this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can program leaders better support their staff in managing behavior without burnout?
That's a really good question. Burnout is a big one. It's not an easy job. That's just the reality. I think early childhood educators, anybody that works with children, they do it because they really have a love for it, and they want to make an impact. For leadership, I think the biggest thing is, one, creating an environment where educators feel safe to be able to come to them with mistakes, with questions, with asks for support, and to be able to get that support. A lot of burnout, from my experience, has been that a lot of burnout is caused because educators feel like they keep asking for help and they keep saying, well, we are really having a hard time with this child, and leadership doesn't actually go into the classroom. They're not there kind of on the front lines doing it day in and day out, and they might offer and say, oh, try this one approach or try that one approach. But until you're right there with them, it's really hard to see what these educators are going through. And I've worked with leadership who say, well, I was a director 15 years ago, and my first response is, you know what, 15 years ago, kids were a completely different arena. We are dealing with a new generation, and I've been doing this for 25 years. I still go into classrooms where I'm like, whoa, what are these behaviors? There's always something new. So for leaders to constantly be kind of in the know, be a support system to your teachers, and let them know that you have their backs, that you're going to support them, that you're going to give them the tools and resources that they need. And sometimes that means bringing somebody else in from the outside. Sometimes that means more concentrated professional development. Even if leadership can offer opportunities for follow-up on that professional development, setting goals, checking in, hey, I know you really were having a struggle with this, how's it going, what can I do to be a support to you? I think teachers just need to know that they've got somebody that has their back outside of the classroom, that's going to be there for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Every situation is unique, and I'm sure, leaders watching this would love to be able to provide hands-on support to their staff day in and day out, but sometimes their role looks a little bit different. And so that's a really great opportunity to be able to bring in, like you said, an outside source, a third party, a coach, and that's the perfect situation for that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, a lot of leadership that I've spoken to, directors, principals, they acknowledge that, and they say, you know what, they're not going to be as open with me as they are with you. And that's why they bring me in. And it is a little bit true, right? It is true to say, okay, well, the person that's doing your annual evaluations and, figuring out where you're going to be in the classroom, it's not always easy to be vulnerable in front of them. But if you have somebody else come in from the outside that can say, hey, my job is to support you, my sole purpose is to see you succeed, it feels a lot safer. And frankly, it kind of turns into that, like teenagers don't listen to their parents when they say something, but if another adult says it, they'll listen. It's kind of the same mindset, right? Like we all kind of are like, yeah, this person's saying the same thing. But having another voice from the outside come in and give that guidance and that support can make a world of a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we mentioned this yet, but where are you located, and how can our viewers in your area get in touch to connect further and learn more?
Yeah, so I am in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. We call it the DMV around here. I mostly work kind of on the East Coast, but I do support national education systems. So state systems will get in touch with me, and I'll do a lot of their professional development, their leadership retreats, and that kind of thing. So I do work nationally, but of course, the DMV is home base. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can either check out my website, which is SKAEDUtraining.com, or they can reach out to me directly at Saba at SKAEDUtraining.com. So my website has all the links to be able to get in touch with me. On every page, you can just click, and it'll come straight to me. Or you can email me directly, and I would love to find a way to support any programs, any educators, any systems that need it, because I think I'm really fortunate at this point in my life to be able to say I found not only something that I'm so passionate about doing, but something that, because I'm passionate about doing, I put my whole heart and soul into it. And I think the results have kind of proven themselves that it's a really effective model.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. I have all of those links in the description of this video and your contact information, as well as in the comments section. But thank you, Saba, so much for joining us today and for sharing. This was a really great conversation.
Yeah, Rachel, thank you so much for having me. And I, hopefully somebody will benefit from the information shared.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you also to everyone watching today and for sharing this resource. We appreciate having you here, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. Bye.
Take care.